Today on Israel Hayom Insider, as the Israeli Air Force looks to replace its aging fleet of Sikorsky King Stallion helicopters, it faces a decision to go for the tried, battle-proven Boeing Chinook or the new and more expensive Sikorsky King Stallion. With me in the studio, military photographer Yissachar Ruas.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Good. Hi, Yissachar. So, first of all, why does the King Stallion, what we call the Yasur, need to be replaced?
So the Yasur has been flying almost 50 years in the Israeli Air Force. Those same helicopters since 1969. If you think about it, Israel just replaced the Skyhawk, which was flying from almost the same period of time, and the Phantom, which was flying back then. All these aircraft have already been replaced. The Yasur is sort of one of those last legacy aircraft that's still flying in the Israeli Air Force.
And we're talking about a heavy lift aircraft, right?
So we're talking about a heavy lift helicopter, what they call a true heavy lift helicopter. It is a very robust helicopter. It lifts, like I mentioned, it lifted 2 weeks after it arrived in Israel. It lifted beyond what the manufacturer had actually planned for it in Israel, doing a special operation where it brought in an Egyptian radar station. The full station was flown in by those helicopters, and it was done basically well beyond the parameters of its capabilities that were thought back then.
Okay, so it's been a very reliable, been considered a very reliable, successful helicopter, right? When does a decision now have to be made about what we're going to replace it with?
So nobody really knows when the decision is going to be made. We're talking about the near future because as the project proceeds, Israel was thinking about 5 or 6 years ago about replacing the fleet back then, but it really didn't find a capable replacement that it felt. They went towards the stage of upgrading, and they upgraded this fleet basically for the second time around because they didn't really see a solution that was better. So we can expect, I think, within the next year or two, we can expect that decision to be made.
And what are the dimensions of the planned deal? How many helicopters? When would they be delivered? At what cost?
So the foreign sources say that Israel operates between 20 and 30 of these helicopters. So you could probably expect a deal in that area. We're talking about what the prices that they're talking about now, which is somewhere in the area of $90 million per helicopter. So you're talking about probably 20 of those. You're talking about a good, at least $1 billion or $2 somewhere in that area as a long-term deal.
Okay. Now you were recently at the Sikorsky Development Center, right, in
West Palm Beach,
Florida, and you got to fly with the Sikorsky with the new King Stallion, right?
So
Tell us about that.
I went out to West Palm Beach. Basically, I flew on a test mission where they tested the rear doors gunner on the King Stallion. The King Stallion's been going through flight tests over there for the past couple of years. It has about 500 test hours already under its belt. There are 4 helicopters that are being tested. They're the 4 test vehicles, they call them. And I can tell you that when you look at the enthusiasm that the Marines have towards it, it's understandable. You're talking about a helicopter that is basically twice as good as its predecessor.
What does that mean, twice as good?
So if you're talking about the predecessor, what we talk about the D or the E models, the D which the Israeli Air Force have, the E models which is something that the Marines already operate, which was manufactured in the 80s. You're talking about a helicopter that lifts about 36,000 pounds versus roughly between 17,000 and 20,000 pounds that the current models lift today. So you're talking about almost a double the capability. You're talking about a helicopter that has a fly-by-wire system, which is very different from any other helicopter that we know today.
Explain fly-by-wire. What does that mean?
So fly-by-wire is a concept that exists mostly in fighter jets, which is basically a computer is replacing the hydraulic system in the aircraft, as opposed to having wires or cables or a long pipe, if you would have, controlling the motion, the movement from the stick all the way to the back, to the flaps, and to the tail of the aircraft. All that motion is basically being done through a computer with a backup system. It allows for 2 things. The first thing that it allows is basically for a more proper range of motion. The other thing that it protects the pilot from doing something that is not within the aircraft's capabilities, whereas it might be mechanically possible through a hydraulic system. On a computer, the computer will detect if you're doing something that the aircraft can't handle, and it will prevent you from doing it.
This airplane is quite a bit more modern. You know, this is This is 21st century technology. So the cockpit is, glass cockpit. It's a fly-by-wire flight control system. So from a safety standpoint, this aircraft is a lot easier to fly than legacy aircraft that have mechanical flight control systems. Just the onboard systems make it a lot safer to fly, especially in degraded visual environments such as nighttime or desert operations with brownout conditions and things like that.
And does this also have some kind of an autopilot?
So this helicopter has, like many helicopters have today, also have an autopilot, but this system is a much more enhanced system. What it allows you to do is it allows you to basically program the helicopter to do certain things. One of the main things is a hover, which all helicopter pilots will tell you is that they are graded. The biggest grade that they can get is a grading about how they hover. So over here you can flip a switch, tell the helicopter you want it in a hover right over here, and you want it to stay in this position regardless of the wind, regardless of anything going on around it. And the helicopter, the computer, basically knows how to keep you in that position no matter what's going on around.
Now, do we buy the helicopter off the shelf, or is it something we need to make adaptations for the Israeli Air Force?
So I can tell you that the Israeli Air Force always needs to adapt. Whatever comes in, they want to adapt. I can tell you that Sikorsky, probably from what I understand from them, has this foresight where they understand that the Israelis are going to want to make certain changes, and they're already anticipating that, and they're looking towards that. So I asked them about the auxiliary fuel tanks, because I looked at this helicopter and I said, well, there's no auxiliary fuel tanks on it, and I'm sure that the Israelis are going to want more range on it, just from the way I know what goes on, that any Air Force wants more range and more capability. And the VP in Sikorsky, Michael Torek, said to me, "Oh yeah, we are anticipating that, and we already have some kind of provision in place if they want to put that in." So I think that they're thinking also that the Israelis are going to want to make changes, and they're thinking towards that. I think that any Air Force is going to want to make changes, and they have to anticipate that.
Certainly, there are things there's provision certainly internally to put the auxiliary fuel tanks in the aircraft, and the system is already designed to do that. And we are looking, because there are other customers also interested. Everyone always wants to have more range, so there's certainly things that we have been looking at that if additional range and fuel is required, there are options we could pursue.
Yissachar, what was it like flying with this aircraft?
So I can tell you that it was pretty amazing. It was an amazing experience just to see. But you see an aircraft that's very, very big. From the outside, you don't think that this aircraft can do what it's doing, and then you see it pull a turn. I had the pilot I asked him to do a dive and pull a turn, and it was you see this heavy, big thing, and it just does that so gracefully that you're in awe of how it does it. And that's part of the reason that it can do that, is because it has a lot of raw power in it that allows for it. Just watching it made it did a little bit, I won't call it aerobatics, but it did a little bit of just showing what its capabilities are. And it's as much as I know the Yasur from here and what it's capable of doing, I think that this one is capable of doing a lot more. I actually asked one of the pilots, there's a famous video of a CH-53 doing what we call a roll that was done on test way back 50 years ago. And I asked the pilot, I said, would you be able to do that with this helicopter? Mm-hmm. And he laughed and smiled, and he said, I wouldn't do it with this helicopter. He says, but I would feel a lot safer if I was doing it in this helicopter than in that helicopter.
Very interesting. All right. Thank you very much, Yissachar.
Thank you.
And thanks to the viewers for continuing to watch us. And send us your feedback. Let us know what you want to see in future shows. And we will see you next time.